Andrew, you brought up a great question earlier, a great point earlier. They're afraid. And I think that this is because they simply don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They're stuck with a problem of their own making, and they don't know what to do about it. As you can see here, just a quick flashback, not even a month, to Anna Soubry, everyone's favourite Liberal Democrat who found themselves in the Conservative Party temporarily. Is it just me upon the accession of Keir Starmer, but suddenly everything feels normal? No more psychodramas and scandals. Like the grown-ups are back in government and people can get on with their lives, watching politics out the corner of their eyes safe.
Did you see her tweet yesterday as well?
No, I didn't actually.
She was tweeting at Lee Anderson saying, "Oh, has Lee Anderson been on the source or done an incorrect Google and confused Southport with Southend by any chance?" Because he tweeted the machete attacks.
Yeah.
And he said, and Lee Anderson just quite retweeted her saying, "Are you drunk? Did you not know these two things were going on at the same time?"
She didn't know.
Yeah.
She didn't. Her filter bubble on social media kept that out.
I love that first reply, bookmarking this one.
This Lewis is a friend of the show. You should have him on.
Yeah, you
a very
should.
good citizen journalist.
Okay.
Lewis is great. But he's exactly right. And that's why I brought this up. Just because, again, 23,000 likes, million views. This is a tweet lots of people felt resonated. Oh, thank God. The adults are back in the room. It's like, okay, well, we're 2-3 weeks later. How's that looking, actually?
Yeah.
Pretty bad. And, things aren't safe. The grown-ups don't seem to be managing this very well. Because I don't know what it is you guys think you can do about any of this. It's you guys, the heirs of the Blairite paradigm, are the people just left holding the bag with all the problems start manifesting themselves as multiculturalism does. So I guess we'll start with the mayor of Liverpool City, who said, "Well, I don't understand why people want to weaponize the deaths of 3 children before the investigations have concluded."
Because they don't feel the investigations are being transparent.
Yeah, but they don't feel that anything will happen or anything will change.
It's such a bizarre inclination to, this horrible things happened. A lot of people are very angry and sad and worried, and they want to know why. And we're all going, why? And then we've got these people coming out going, why are you weaponizing? Don't worry about why. We'll deal with all this. Well, you're not dealing with it because it keeps happening.
And moreover, this is policy. Like allowing millions and millions of people from anywhere in the world without any consideration to the political history of that country, in the case of Rwanda, or the general crime rate of the country, or the religious tendencies of the country. People have been let in indiscriminately. That was government policy for the last 25 years. And so why are you weaponizing this politically? Well, what did you expect? Did you not expect a political reaction from your political policy? Obviously, people are going to respond in this way. And this, I don't understand why people want to weaponize it. Well, then ask them. Ask them. Go and ask them. You can literally just go up to one of the protesters and say, why are you doing this? And he'll tell you why. Because he doesn't feel safe in his own bloody country. It's insufferable. I find the response to all of this just absolutely insufferable.
Well, also, we're being taunted with this, the grown-ups are back in the room kind of thing. The grown-ups who want to increase immigration even more than the previous grown-ups. So these are the grown-ups. When you're taunted like that, of course your response is going to be, oh yeah, let's bookmark this. That's what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Keir Starmer being heckled. Keir Starmer is actually against the levels of immigration we have, actually. Keir Starmer, on paper, wishes to bring these down.
Okay. I have to argue with you.
Sorry.
Who is his puppet master?
Tony Blair.
Yeah, who orchestrated all of this?
Tony Blair.
Okay, and right before the general election was called, they had a debate in Parliament about Palestinian refugee visa scheme.
Yep.
And the shadow immigration minister, now the immigration minister, says, we have already drafted a Ukrainian-style refugee visa scheme for Palestinians, considering the cultural and historical baggage that may be brought to bear against the British. Mm-hmm. Overall numbers don't really matter when you want to import hundreds of thousands of hostile terrorists.
Well, I'm just saying that he isn't going... I'm not saying that he's going to be based Keir Starmer is going to get the net immigration down to negative, but what he will do is take it down from 700,000 to 300,000.
Lots of those reforms were already implemented by the last idiot Home Secretary.
Sure, but the reason that it was more than 1 million coming in every year is because the Conservatives are terrible at everything. And Keir Starmer will come in and, incidentally, Tony Blair's trending. How fascinating. Tony Blair has doubtless been in Keir Starmer's ear going, what are you doing? That's unsustainable. People will revolt and we won't get the mass immigration that we want. We will get an end to immigration entirely.
You say that, though. Again, his Justice Minister... First week, 40,000 criminals like Bain.
I know.
The entire last few weeks have had multiple riots, multiple stabbings. Has Tony Blair been getting on him and going, you've got to get out in front of this, do you? This is terrible optics. Blair wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think he's nearly as competent as you think he is.
No, I'm not saying. I don't think it's Blair. I think it's Starmer.
No, I'm saying I don't think Starmer's nearly as competent as you think.
Well, no, I'm not saying that Starmer is competent. But what I'm saying is, I think Starmer will get immigration down to about 300,000 a year net. Not that that's good, because one of the advantages of the Conservatives being utterly incompetent is it makes immigration an unbearable issue. Say, well, look, the towns and cities all across the country are just changing beyond recognition. At least when it's in your face in the way the Conservatives have put it, it becomes a live political issue. But if they tone it down and so it's like, well, it's only 300,000, it's not that much, it becomes much less of a pressure. But the thing is, the effect is still the same. It just takes a bit longer, right? And so, you still end up with the pro-Palestine lot with bigger and bigger mobs, So
taking longer is important, because taking longer, that's the problem that we have is social cohesion. And by having so many people so quickly, that's part of the problem. If you have people, you hope that within a few generations they start to.
But they aren't though.
The numbers are still just too high.
It's not just the numbers. Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument that I could flat pack build houses to accommodate hundreds of thousands of people every year. Why should I?
But
I should reserve the right to say you're not going to be good neighbors.
Of course.
No matter what numbers, therefore you shouldn't come.
Of course, but the left will say, okay, but we need skills, we need jobs, we need whatever.
Aging population.
Yeah,
but that actively cuts against having kids.
Sure, they'll come up with their own answers, but that's not germane to the issue of integration, right? The issue of integration can't happen because the people who hold British values do not live around the immigrants. And so the immigrants have no long exposure to the values. They can't imbibe them. They can't feel pressured to adopt them. And it's because we have handled this in the absolute worst way. Because what we've done is allowed the immigrants to go wherever they want, right? Norway didn't do this. Norway literally told them, no, you're going to this remote Norwegian town and it's just your family's going to this one town. So you're going to integrate because you're literally the only family there, right? And so the Norwegian process of this has been a lot better than ours. We've just allowed colonies to spring up. It's like, yeah, go where you like. It doesn't really matter. It's like, no, this absolutely matters. And when it's 300,000 a year, net, or 700,000 a year net, the number is just far too high. It would have to be something like 10 or 20,000 for this to not happen. But we're way beyond that now.
Yeah.
So,
and as Connor says, we have to then encourage higher birth rates to keep up.
Absolutely. And notice how the conversation is not about integration anymore. No one ever mentions integration anymore. This just doesn't come up because what are they going to integrate into? Like Luton is 2/3 non-English. How are they going to integrate into the English community when the English community is swamped by foreign peoples?
And also, anytime the English are brought up as having a collective ethnic and cultural and historical identity, it's
negative.
Being beaten with the unique and inappropriate cudgel of slavery and all of these other things, despite us having a better track record on those things.
It's a funny thing, and I'm sure you've seen this before, but I lived in Argentina for 6 years, and I came to realize that I always thought of nationalism as a very right-wing thing, of course, and it was the left over there. And then I came to realize other countries, Canada, for example, it's the left that tends to be very nationalistic. It's the countries that see themselves as a little bit smaller on the world stage. The left gets really nationalistic. And it was so interesting to see lefty Argentines over there, just like loving all the Evita Peron stuff. They've got cafes called Evita or something like that, and they all do the national anthem. They're loving the football team. And it's so bizarre. And then you come back and it's any pride in your country here, people are going in a derogatory way, you're right-wing, this and that. And really, nationalism can be anywhere. And we should be able to be proud of our country without having to pick a side politically.
No, I think that's totally true. But the problem is that our left has become an internationalist left. They're for everything non-British and everything foreign. So it's just like, okay, well then, how can we? Because I mean, like, the sort of blue Labour types, I don't doubt I would get on with very, very well. The
largest socially conservative cohort in this country are not Thatcherite economically.
No, absolutely.
This is something that Matt Goodwin's pointed out, and this is a limitation actually to reform's reach electorally, is that their economic policies are off-putting to people in the red wall.
Yeah, but on a sort of patriotic level, these people are going to be just as patriotic as anyone else. They're not internationalists, and that's the different fracture we've got now. Speaking of internationalists, actually, let's take Hamza Yusuf.
Oh God,
incredible, right? So, of course, police monitoring the far-right rally, and he responds to, simply awful. The only response to the evil we witnessed in Southport today should be an outpouring of grief for the children and adults killed in such a senseless attack. If you use such a tragedy, horrific tragedy to fuel bigotry, then you are the worst of humanity.
It's not the only response. No, we should ask, was this preventable, actually?
Yeah, that's what I did ask. And I
love
ratioed the hell out of him.
His use of worst implies
Yeah.
worse than the actual murderer.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Isn't
He's
that-
insane.
Well, is he insane or is he just evil himself? Because you will remember his white speech.
Head of police, white. I
Yeah.
can't do a Scottish accent.
Wait.
White.
The victims in Southport, white. Sorry, Hamza, I think you hate white people.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that you hate white people. I think there's good evidence as to why that may be the case. And if you think that being a racist is worse than stabbing children, then I think you're mad.
Plus, we don't. I mean, were they all racist, or were they concerned about?
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
obviously. But let's just take it as a given. They're all racists, Hamza. Just to steel man your argument, they're still not as bad as the person who murdered a bunch of children.
Just think throughout time, everyone's racist. That's human, right? We're tribal. Every single person, especially you two. And I'm joking, but
Especially Hamza.
Especially Hamza.
Yeah.
It's always been the case that we notice differences, whether it be race, height, whatever. Somebody looks like your mum, so you're nicer or less nicer. That's just humanity.
Sure.
But we create social stigma. We create societies around us that say this part of bigotry, let's say, is acceptable today. And Hamza's found that loophole. So he's just as racist and angry as we all are sometimes. But in this particular time and place, he's able to do that anti-white racism. In 50 years, it'll be something else you're allowed to have a go at.
And to be particularly cynical about this, I can't help but feel that if the stabber's parents hadn't come from Rwanda and perhaps had come from Scotland, then he wouldn't be quite as like, the racists are the real problem here. If he was white himself, I don't think they'd be complaining about the far right rally so much. No. Just to say.
We can only guess, but
and so the response from Keir Starmer, there's another. Hamza Yusuf basically was calling for censorship as well. We need to take action against the far right.
Here we go.
Stabbings aren't something we need to worry about. We need to prescribe the English Defence League. Well, let's prescribe the Nazi Party as well if we're prescribing things that don't exist.
Yeah, but then that might render the SNP out of existence.
Good point, actually. But the English Defence League don't exist. They were disbanded in 2013, so prescribing them wouldn't do anything. The people themselves would still exist, and taking action against them because they were angry, well, I mean, sure, take legal action, against the guys involved in the riot. Again, I'm happy for them all to be collectively punished. What were you doing there? All of you in the videos, boom. Whatever the punishment is, I don't mind. But this is the natural left-wing response, because what this does, and this is what really is the underlying tectonic shift that they're feeling, is this is the inherent weakness of multiculturalism. And if one side acts like the other side, then there is a distinct power imbalance there, right? The Roma community of Leeds or Hare Hills is not going to have the same kind of political power as the English community if they operate in the same way. And this is what they're afraid of. Oh no, if that happens, then the entire thing gets flipped and we essentially turn into an English nationalist country, because if there is a sort of collective politicization along the lines of these identities, we're happy to politicize all of the minority identities against the majority who are not allowed to be politicized. But if they find legitimate reason to politicize themselves, then it's an English nationalist country and it will be forever. And people like Hamza Yusuf are the ones who are going to be actually on the outside of the paradigm. Whereas at the moment, he's right in the center of it. And so that's why they're terribly afraid. And that's why they want prescription of the English Defence League. That's one that all of the far right, all of those people who represent indigenous identity need to be made illegal. Because if they're legal, they can flip this entire board. And that's what he's worried about.
Man, can you imagine if I ran to be, what was he? Was the what minister?
First minister of Scotland.
First minister. If I was the first minister of like
Rwanda.
Yeah, or Bangladesh. Bangladesh just going, this person, right? Asian, Bangladeshi, what's going on? How they, I just can't believe that. And
It's mad, isn't it?
it's when you think of it, when you sort of zoom out a bit, it's incredible we've gotten to this point. I think about this a lot, having lived in different countries and things. You come back to England, you go, oh my God, the sensibilities we have, aside from maybe Canada, Australia, parts of America.
The Anglosphere.
Yeah, they're nothing like anywhere else. There was that big story about the Argentinian football team. They sung a song that was deemed racist, and it probably was racist, I don't know, when they won the Copa America football thing recently. And like, I know from being in Argentina, they have a different attitude. They make jokes about race, and it's actually going okay for them. They find race is funny, and they can joke about it. They don't care. Whereas here, all I'm getting on the radio, everyone's opinion, every single person was just, okay, so what if he apologized? He needs to be punished more. Punish the guy for singing the song. Punish him. Re-educate. We need to send him to re-education camps. And you go, how is this moral imperialism allowed from the left? The left are going, well, don't tell others cultures how to do, unless it's about wokeness. Then we're going to go and tell them, and go in and tell this country that's doing fine on its own. I get so fed. I get so frustrated about this. I actually lose sleep over it.
But the questions of representation are really important. I mean, you can't imagine going to any foreign country outside of Europe and North America and expecting to see the people at the top of that country not being of the ethnic majority.
Yeah.
Like, that would be crazy if you went to China and there was like some Peruvian in charge, and there were a bunch of Peruvians in the rival parties, and there were Peruvians in all of the levels of government and civil service. You'd be like, did you guys get taken over or something? And yet look at the Conservative Party leadership contest at the moment. It's like, what is happening here, man?
Kemi Badenoch's chief selling point is that Britain is not a racist country, lefties, because look how far I've gotten. And it's like, right, so the premise of that is, if you had not gotten to the position you are, and if you don't keep advancing in positions, then somewhere along the chain, there is institutional racism that indicts the entire country. Actually, no, I don't need to elect you prime minister to feel better about myself.
Yeah, and moreover, if we're going to talk about representation, how does Humza Yousaf actually represent Scottish people? And, it seems to be actively racist against them.
Yeah, well, I think of Mossa Ali as well.
Yeah.
The Ali Akbar stuff.
Yeah.
And people just saying, it means God is great. Are you kidding me? What?
It's got no other connotations.
Yeah.
No other connotations.
He's supposed to
shout that in the cinema, and everyone's going to remain in their seats.
He's just been elected to represent the British people who hear that word in their worst nightmares. If he isn't aware that there's another connotation for us, and again, imagine me going to some Arabic country and speaking Hebrew or something when I've been elected to the.
I don't think you'd last very long. I'm going to be honest.
No,
Minister of Defence, Arab. Anyway,
won't get out the airport.
So Humza Yousaf had awful takes, but what's surprise there? Keir Starmer had an awful take as well. Oh, well, this is the problem with Southport is knife crime. And this is the worst framing I've seen ever.
It's like the scene in Macbeth where just the visage appears floating towards Duncan. It's like, the knife did not animate itself, suspended in the air, funnily enough. Someone was holding it. Who was that person? Oh, we can't ask questions.
I hate this so much because this isn't knife crime. Because when we say knife crime in Britain, what we're talking about is actually the Southend events, where it's youths going around with weapons, stabbing each other in the street. That's not what happened in Southport. What happened in Southport was a conscious, targeted attack. We know that the man who did this wore a balaclava, chose his target, got a taxi there, refused to pay the taxi driver, and then went in and conducted what looks like a terror attack. Now, again, I don't know what the reasons for it were yet, obviously, but this wasn't just gangs of people on the street fighting each other. This is not knife crime. This was an attack, a targeted attack on the most vulnerable people he could find, which was schoolgirls. So, for the fact that Keir Starmer can't even admit and has to try and pivot to something else is disgraceful, in my opinion. Absolutely disgraceful. But again, he doesn't know what to do. What's he supposed to do? He's afraid. He's like, well, knives are bad. Yeah, but that wasn't the issue. That wasn't the issue. The issue was someone wanted to kill a bunch of English children. Why did he want that, Keir? I
suppose it would be irresponsible before he knows more. You'd like to think he does know a bit more at this point.
Maybe, yeah.
It could just be a person who has mental health difficulties.
Could be anything.
Yeah,
we don't know, and they haven't.
But then,
told us.
hang on, but that doesn't preclude us from holding them culpable. I mean, remember the Nottingham stabbing? He got held. He was found guilty of manslaughter and put in a psych ward. Sorry, every other American serial killer. I mean, nobody would think that Jeffrey Dahmer didn't have mental health difficulties. Still found him culpable enough to send him to prison for life. Or Ted Bundy. Like, we were perfectly happy to stick him in the election.
But what I mean is that at this point, Keir Starmer, there's as you say, there's very little he really could say because it could be a mental health issue, and then he should be saying, "Hey, we need to do something about mental health." It could be an Islam issue, and then he has to say, but at this point, he can't really.
Sure, but Carl's right in that it's not knife crime. It wasn't a spontaneous turf war. It was a targeted attack.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's Islamic terror
who knows? Yeah, we don't know.
Is irrelevant to the point. It was a terror attack.
Yeah.
It was an attack that was designed to strike fear in the heart of a particular community.
Yeah.
And we don't know the reason for it yet. So there was a lot of discussion on LBC and elsewhere. This is just the totemic example. If he was born in Cardiff, then surely he's Welsh. Right. Yeah, because if I'm born in a stable, then surely I'm a horse. I was born in a hospital, so surely I'm a doctor. Right? Like,
It's ludicrous.
What does make someone Welsh then?
Well, it's an ethnicity, right?
Right.
Any ethnicity is passed down through heredity. You inherit your ethnic identity and your ethnic being through your parents. Now, I'm not saying that this kid isn't culturally acclimatized to being Welsh. I don't know.
Well, he clearly isn't.
Well, I don't know. Again, I don't want to make any kind of statement.
Well, I don't think it's in Welsh culture to go and stab a bunch of schoolgirls.
Sure, but he might have been mentally ill or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not saying either way, right? But this is the thing. This is the magic soil view, right? This is he was born in Cardiff, therefore he must be Welsh. It's like, that's not how ethnicity works, I'm afraid, right?
It's a nationality, isn't it? Welsh is a nationality.
Well, I don't know, actually.
Yeah, but the question here is whether or not there is a different and incompatible cultural identity with the host nation.
That's true.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make him not Welsh. It could be that he's influenced by...
We don't know how he identifies himself. That's the thing. Because if this person has, and this is the problem we have with a lot of second-generation immigrants, is actually they feel their identities are tied very much to their home countries. Even though they themselves haven't been to these home countries, they still long for whatever it is that they feel that's been taken away from them. And so, I don't know, did he call himself Welsh? It's entirely possible that he doesn't.
Would you say that's what it is then? It's because it is subjective, I think, what a nationality or whatever it is.
Well, at least the personal identity.
So, before, I'm just thinking of footballers who play for England who are black and maybe they had parents from Africa. To me, if these are English guys.
No, they're British by citizenship, but they're not ethnically English. And that doesn't mean that they're any less people. It just means it's not true that they're ethnically English. And that's fine. That's all right. And the thing is as well, if they've been born here and they want to play for the England team, clearly in their hearts and minds it's their homeland. Yeah. That's the story they tell themselves. Was this chap born in Wales Welsh by the story he told himself? I think that if he goes and stabs young girls, I don't think that's a very Welsh thing to do. He doesn't see the Welsh or the English.
Well, that's why I asked. Yeah. But is it a self-identifying?
Well,
it's a mixture.
But the problem with this is that it conceals all of the complexities of identity, right? And it's a comforting lie we tell ourselves. It's like, okay, well, I mean, there are loads of Islamic radicals who have been born here, go on to commit horrific attacks, and they are in their hearts not of this place,
sure,
right? And so, but we say, oh, he was born in Luton, he must have been British, or must have been English. So, no, he feels a very strong connection to his ancestral homeland that is in some way denied because he's been born and raised over here. And we actually don't apply the standard elsewhere. We don't say that India's most famous poet is Rudyard Kipling, even though he was born and raised in India. He's not an Indian, and we know he's not an Indian. We know he's an Englishman, and we know the Indians knew he was an Englishman because he got kicked out upon decolonization. Okay, so there is a lot underneath this that's a very long and complex conversation that simply saying, well, if he's born in Cardiff, he's Welsh, bro, completely obscures and makes you sound totally ignorant on the subject. That's the problem.
See, I agree with that. I'm not comfortable with what ethnically English or Welsh necessarily even means and how far back we take that. But with regards to self-identifying as an English person, as you say with Kipling, obviously he didn't identify as an Indian person, didn't take on their cultural mores.
But I don't want to be rude. Whether or not you're comfortable with it doesn't change the fact that it is a reality.
Well, how far back have you had the DNA tests?
Well, okay, let's for example, I'm an Englishman. My mum's half of the family, my nan's Irish, born in Ireland, brought up with an Irish accent, moved over. So I'm ethnically part Irish. Well, I'm not going to call myself an Irishman, but that is a composition of my ethnicity. It's not necessarily a strong part of my identity, but it is real. Right?
If someone said you're an Englishman, you were born, I understand that is simplified. It's too simple, but would it then be fair to say, no, what do you mean he's English? He's part Irish?
But that doesn't mean that he can't also be English.
Yes.
Like this is what I mean, where this is a very complex conversation. But the problem with one of the aspects of ethnicity is because it's hereditary, it grounds you in something. And if your parents are both Rwandan, you don't have any of that heritage. This is why marrying into a tribe is so important. So your children are in fact a mix of the two ethnic groups that have a rootedness in the place in which they're raised. And so they can't get away from the fact that, no, you're half Welsh or you're half whatever. You have to accept that that's a part of yourself, right?
Yeah, this still feels more cultural than ethnic.
Well, there's
what you're describing.
The thing is, there's no difference, right? Like, I'm not saying it's racial, because an ethnicity isn't just the biological level. It's the habits, it's the religion, it's the moral values, it's the history that led up to this point. It's a whole continuum of things. And we want to try and separate certain things out for convenience, in this case, for example. But it's just not that easy. These are all things that are tied together. And saying, well, he was born in Cardiff, he's Welsh, reduces it all to this one geographic location, which isn't accurate and ignores and obscures so much that's happening. But as we're running low on time, I think we're going to have to move on a bit. Sorry, we probably won't get very many comments on this one, but there's been a lot to cover. So Femi.
Oh, I was so angry.
Go on. I didn't want to give Femi the time of day because he got me blocked. Anyway.
No, but this is the perfect encapsulation of it's civilization's collective fault that produces the criminal. He says, how could we let this happen? How can a 17-year-old commit such horrendous acts of violence? What was wrong with him? Can we improve safeguards to catch warning signs of these kinds of mentalities? Twitter, nah, it's his ethnicity. It's like, again, he was not telling himself the cultural story. The people he was living around were his fellow countrymen, which is why he felt entitled to go and stab a bunch of children. And funnily enough, other than his parents and their lax parenting, presumably, nobody except him bears moral responsibility for this. It's not my fault as a taxpayer because I didn't pay for enough youth clubs to occupy his time that he therefore had the mentality of stabbing a bunch of children.
To be fair, I feel we may be jumping the gun a bit here because, like I said, we only know that he is of Rwandan ethnicity, and that's pretty much it. Right?
Yes, but his indictment is the very Rousseauian view of civilization instructs the criminal.
I agree.
And so I'm not accepting it.
But I would like concrete details as to why this kid did this. Because again, the whole thing must have required some planning. He must have known that on a Saturday, because I saw a report from one of the people on the ground, like a local, saying, well, look, if you didn't know this thing was here, you wouldn't be able to find it by just walking past it.
It's down an alleyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's down an alleyway in a church hall or something like this, town hall or something. And there are other things around in the same building and stuff like that. So you must have had that in your mind, right? A group of young girls are going to be doing ballet there. I'm going to get the taxi there with my mask on, with my knife, and I'm going to go in there and go down the alley and find it. So he must have had a conscious plan to take action. And so, if this was a random stabbing in a supermarket or something, you could be like, okay, he didn't have a plan. Maybe he's just mental or something, just snapped or whatever. But this was something that was premeditated and calculated in advance. So until I get some information about that, I don't want to make any blanket statements.
They'll never tell us. We'll never know.
They may well never tell us.
No, they won't.
They'll just say, don't look back in anger.
Yeah, it's really annoying. And you ever see that South Park episode where they go to San Francisco and start smelling their own farts?
Yes.
That's Femi.
Yes. That is Femi.
You can imagine writing that maybe with some nicer classical music on, some candle lights.
Indeed can.
Smelling the farts.
Aren't I so smart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one thing I hate is the shitlib journo class, who are the worst people in the world, frankly. I genuinely hate this kind of middle-class snobbery. Shameful. The idea that the thugs behind this call themselves patriots is risible. What they did last night is odious. Yeah, I agree. They were in the wrong.
Didn't he defend Hugh Edwards?
Quite possibly, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? Again, it's a similar thing from Tim Walk here. I feel ashamed of our country on days like this. Yeah, I'm ashamed for you as well. But the point that I really hate that comes across from this is that this becomes an excuse to go, finally, don't worry about the kid who stabbed the children. We don't have to worry about that. That's a difficult conversation. I don't have to have that. But what's an easy conversation is shitting on the working class. That's really easy. Fantastic. So the court jester of the middle class can come out and be like, oh, get these people behind bars. I hate the working class. Oh, look at them, they're all bad. It's like, no, they're unrepresented. They're not being listened to, and they're frustrated. They didn't do this out of nothing, and they did this because people like you occupy the discourse and don't give them the time of day because of your bigotry towards them. This is why I genuinely hate the middle class.
Jonathan Pye's really sort of gone a bit off.
Oh, totally. But he's just really embraced the proper role of the court jester of the Keir Starmer era.
Well, Andrew Doyle stopped writing for him as well.
Exactly. That's why he stopped being interesting. But one thing I thought was really interesting, Claire Fox, who went on Talk TV and really actually hammered and hit on the the main underpinning point. And let's watch this.
I think the riot
happening in front of your very eyes. I mean, I know somebody. Everybody knows somebody who's seen stuff being lifted from a shop, seen somebody running out of a shop, seen somebody having a fight in the middle of the street, seen somebody running down.
people all over social media saying the name this person is, and he's.
All right, I can't remember exactly what the timestamp was, but as you can say there, the quote is: "People refuse to acknowledge that we've got a problem of Islamism," and that's what the people attacking the mosque were responding to. Now, in this particular case, they were misdirected, they were wrong, but the reason that they're there and the reason that this is such a live, an open wound, is because there is a real problem with the clash of cultures between Islamic civilization and British civilization. And the people, the John Sopels of the world, the Jonathan Pyes of the world, are not exposed to that. They're not exposed to the raw edge of what happens. However, the people who are going and protesting in Southport, rioting in Southport, they're the ones who are. They're the ones who have had this imposed upon them. And so...
Yeah. Do you remember 10 years or 15 years ago, Stacey Dooley did that documentary?
She did.
And she couldn't make that now, could she?
No.
If I had made... I mean, she's white as well, and white women now in the hierarchy Olympics are not doing too well. They're almost as bad as being a white man, being a white woman nowadays. She was able to do that. She would never be able to do that now. So what's changed there?
And that was in 2011 as well. You can see how, Stacey Dooley is the sort of person who would be normally just fall completely into sort of the early 2000s Love Actually consensus, right? Where it's just this is the nice multicultural world we want to live in. And she's watching the women in burqas calling her all sorts of things. She's just like, oh my God, what's happening? It's what is happening? And that was 13 years ago now, right? How much worse has it got? Well, quite a lot worse. And yet we're still at the point where we're just going to demonize the working class for being like, guys, this is really affecting us.
It's gotten so much worse that we've actually gone past the point where you could make a documentary like that, even exposing it.
Completely.
That's scary.
And there's not even any need to make a documentary like that anymore. Everyone can see it. It's just in everyone's face.
People deny it. A lot of people deny it's happening.
That is true. But I'm of the opinion that the second the NIMBY Lib Dem voter gets the ethnic diversity running down their street with a machete, they're voting BNP. I think they're going to flip instantly.
It's too late by then.
Well, yeah, it might well be too late by then, but I'm certain those people will go quite right wing.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can watch Dan's series Brokenomics, where he interviews former Conservative MP Marcus Fish about what he believes led to the Conservative Party's defeat and his frustrations with the party. And if you want to see what else we're putting out, we share links to everything on our Twitter account so you don't get to miss anything. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.